Hi, my name is Udy Kumra, and welcome to another episode of Udy History. Now, this may be hard for some of us to believe, but it turns out that for most of human history, nation-states have not actually been the dominant form of political organization. In fact, for most of human history after the Agricultural Revolution, it's not been nation-states that have ruled the world. It's been empires. So today we're going to look at the first empire, which started in a place called Mesopotamia. Mesopotamia is mostly in what we now call Iraq, and some of it is in Syria. In Greek, it means the land between the rivers. The two rivers that the Greeks were referring to just then were the Tigris and Euphrates rivers. All of the Mesopotamian city-states started in that area because it was incredibly fertile from the random floodings that occurred there. Those city-states started specifically in the southern part of Mesopotamia, which we call Sumer. The Sumerian city-states, which started out as villages, not city-states, were the first societies to actually utilize the food surplus from agriculture as a means of specialization of labor in order to grow into increasingly complex societies. Some of those city-states then became monarchies, as individuals who had received emergency powers from their city-state governments then usurped those city-state governments and became monarchs in their own right. Once effective states were formed, however, they naturally started fighting each other for revenge, political interest, resources, or just for fun. We're actually not entirely sure about some of the cases. They were actually fighting so much that the constant state of war and threat of attack actually influenced their art. Do you see this? Do these people look happy? Eventually, some conquerors in Mesopotamia got tired of this chaos and decided that instead of constantly fighting, they would fight harder and try to conquer city-states and bring them into some kind of political unity in order to stop them from fighting each other constantly. This was a new idea, and the first person who came up with it was a guy named Sargon from the city-state Akkad, whose precise location has eluded archaeologists for years. Sargon began his political career not as a king, however. He began it as a minister for the king of Kish, which was a proto-empire, sort of. He was a talented administrator and a brilliant warrior, so naturally he was the perfect person that the king of Kish would want as his minister. Now, this city-state had some influence over other city-states, which is how it was sort of like a proto-empire, but Sargon was about to overhaul that in a big way. The first thing that Sargon did was lead a coup against the king, usurp him, take the throne, and install himself as the king. He then went on to recruit an army and conquer other city-states, making his home city-state of Akkad the capital of his empire. By having military control over and a military presence in all of these different city-states, he had what historians would consider an empire. And at its height, his empire embraced all of Mesopotamia, and his army numbered over 500,000 people. After Sargon had gained control of these city-states, though, he now needed to figure out how to keep control of them. Other conquerors in Mesopotamia had seen what he had done and wanted to try it out for themselves, and the city-states that he had conquered didn't really want to be in the empire, because they wanted to be sovereign. The main administrative technique that he developed in response to this was a very simple one. He and his army traveled throughout the empire from city to city, making sure that they would not rebel. But this both had and didn't have the desired effect. In the short term, it worked. The city-states didn't rebel, and he sort of had good control over them. However, the biggest problem was that the cities that he visited did not get nice treatment. They had to feed and house and clothe and give a lot of money to Sargon and his army, and it was generally not a good time or a good experience for the city-state, and the army got all the good things out of it. In exchange, the city-states and the people that lived in those city-states didn't get anything out of it. And over time, the city-states and their people grew to resent the Akkadian Empire, and eventually this became a problem. After his death, his successors continued his administrative practice, and actually, the empire lasted for a pretty decent amount of time. But between the increasing number of revolts from resentment from their own people that they had conquered and the increasing number of invasions from other conquerors, the Akkadian Empire began to decline, and Sargon's empire eventually fell apart after about 200 years. Despite his empire's inevitable collapse, though, Sargon's legacy lived on long after his time. He represented a historical experiment in both gaining control of and administering multiple political entities. Soon after the fall of the Akkadians, however, the memory of empire would be recorded in histories and legends and inspire countless others, including a man named Hammurabi from Babylon. And long after his death, men such as Julius Caesar, Genghis Khan, and Napoleon Bonaparte would continue to create empires, all because this one man had started it all before any of them. Sargon, you changed history. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.